Some people judge too quickly. Others realize too late who they were really dealing with. The restaurant was packed with customers, but the employees behind the counter weren't focused on their work. Instead, they stood near the register, laughing among themselves, whispering just loud enough for others to hear. The target of their jokes was a delivery man, a tall, broad-shouldered black man wearing a simple uniform with the logo of a well-known courier service on his shirt. He had just walked in holding a clipboard waiting for someone to acknowledge him, but instead of a greeting, he got side glances and smirks. One of the employees nudged another, whispering loud enough to be heard. Must be lost, thought this was the back entrance. The others chuckled, watching him as if he didn't belong. The man didn't react. He simply stood there calmly, tapping his pen against the clipboard, as if he had all the time in the world. Finally, one of the employees strolled up, lazily, barely looking at him. "What do you need?" He smiled patiently. "Delivery for the manager, is he in?" The worker scoffed and crossed his arms. "Manager doesn't have time for deliveries, just leave it and go." A silence stretched between them. The other workers continued to snicker, still assuming the man was nothing more than a delivery guy on his daily route. But then he took a slow breath and finally spoke, his voice steady and sharp. "I'm not here to drop off a package. I'm here to check on my business." The laughter stopped instantly. The employees exchanged confused looks. The smirking cashier stiffened. "Business? What business?" The man pulled a piece of paper from his clipboard and placed it firmly on the counter. "This business." He tapped the document, his expression unreadable. The legal documents transferring full ownership of the restaurant to him, the new owner. Mouths dropped. The color drained from the cashier's face. Someone in the kitchen peeked out at the growing tension. No one said a word. The man finally smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I came in to see how my employees treat people when they think no one important is watching. I have my answer now." One of the waiters stammered, "Wait, this is a joke, right?" He shook his head. "Not at all. What's a joke is the way you and your coworkers treated me just now. Disrespectful, dismissive, laughing at someone you assumed was beneath you." The cashier swallowed hard, glancing nervously at the others. "This was just a misunderstanding. We thought—" The man cut him off sharply. "You thought wrong, and now you're all fired." The reaction was instant. Someone gasped. One worker tried to speak up but stopped. The reality of the situation was settling in. They had mocked and dismissed the very man who signed their paychecks, and now there was no way to undo it. The man let out a slow breath, shaking his head as he looked around at the restaurant he now owned. This place needs new leadership, new employees, people who understand that respect is not optional. The fired workers were too stunned to argue. They had spent the last 10 minutes mocking a man they assumed was beneath them, only to find out that he was the one with the real power. As they slowly gathered their things and walked out, heads down, voices hushed, the new owner turned to the remaining employees, the ones who hadn't laughed, the ones who had stayed silent or had looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "If you stayed quiet because you knew what they were doing was wrong, I suggest you remember this moment, because next time, silence won't protect you either." The remaining employees nodded quickly, determined not to make the same mistake. That evening, as the restaurant continued its service with a completely different atmosphere, the new owner sat at the back table going over plans for change. A manager walked up hesitantly, clearing his throat. "Sir, I just wanted to say, what you did today, that was powerful." The man looked up, nodding slightly. "It wasn't about power. It was about setting the standard for how things will be run here from now on. Everyone gets treated with respect, no exceptions." And with that, he went back to his notes, already planning how to rebuild the team with people who understood that dignity and hard work mattered more than assumptions and prejudice. Because in the end, the biggest lesson was not for the ones who were fired, it was for the ones who stayed and realized how close they had come to losing everything because of a single moment of arrogance. Some people judge without thinking. Others learn when it's too late that respect costs nothing but losing it costs everything. The next morning, the restaurant felt different. The fired employees were gone and a new energy filled the air. The staff that remained worked with a quiet determination, an unspoken understanding that things had changed. The new owner sat in his office reviewing applications, determined to build a team that valued professionalism over arrogance. As he read through resumes, the door opened cautiously. A young waitress stepped inside, shifting nervously. "Sir, may I speak with you?" He gestured for her to sit, recognizing her as one of the employees who had stayed silent the day before. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I should have spoken up when they were mocking you. I knew it was wrong, but I was afraid to say anything. I just wanted to apologize." The owner studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You weren't the only one who stayed silent, but you're the first to admit it." She looked down, ashamed. "I don't want to be that person who ignores what's right just because it's easier." He leaned forward, his expression firm. "Then don't. Speak up next time, not just for me, but for anyone being treated unfairly. That's the kind of person I want working here." Her eyes widened. "You mean I still have a job?" "That depends," he said, raising an eyebrow. "Can you promise me that from now on, you won't just do your job, but you'll also make sure this place is built on respect?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, absolutely." "Good," he said, standing. "Because this is more than just a restaurant now. It's a statement." By the end of the week, the restaurant had a new team. Fresh faces, eager to work, customers noticing the change in atmosphere, word spreading fast about the new ownership. People weren't just coming for the food anymore. They were coming because they respected the man who ran it, the man who had proven that character mattered more than status. One afternoon, an older man in a suit entered, looking around the restaurant with interest. He approached the counter where the owner stood, watching his team work efficiently and respectfully. The man smiled. "You run this place well, better than the last owner." The new owner smirked. "That's the goal." The man extended his hand. "I'm Charles Reed. I own several restaurant chains. I've been looking for someone with strong leadership to oversee expansion. I think you might be the right person for it." The owner blinked, studying the businessman carefully. This wasn't just a casual offer. This was an opportunity to take what he built and expand it into something much bigger. "I don't make decisions lightly," he said slowly, "but if we're going to work together, understand one thing. Respect and integrity come first in every location." Charles smiled. "That's exactly why I came to you." Months later, the once small restaurant had become the foundation for a rapidly growing franchise built on the principles of fairness, professionalism, and respect. The new owner no longer just ran one business, he oversaw an empire. An empire born from one moment of judgment and one decisive response to it. One evening, he walked through the first location, now thriving with new customers and loyal employees. The young waitress who had once hesitated to speak up was now a manager, training others on the values that had been set from the start. She saw him enter and smiled. "Sir, I think we did something special here, didn't we?" He looked around at the restaurant, at the customers, at the employees, who treated each other like equals. "Yes," he said with a satisfied nod, "I think we did." Because in the end, it wasn't about firing those employees. It was about proving that respect wasn't just expected, it was demanded. And those who failed to understand that would never belong in a place built on something greater than arrogance. Some people think power is in wealth or status, but the real power, it's in how you treat others when no one is watching. The success of the restaurant wasn't luck. It was the result of a decision that respect wasn't optional, a decision that those who mocked others had no place in a business built on fairness and hard work. And as word spread about the new leadership, people took notice. One evening, as the owner sat in his office going through financial reports, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. He answered cautiously, and a familiar voice spoke. "Mr. Carter, this is Charles Reed. I hope I'm not disturbing you." The owner leaned back, recognizing the name immediately. "Not at all, Mr. Reed. What can I do for you?" There was a brief pause before Reed spoke. "I've been watching your work over the last few months. I've seen how you turned a struggling restaurant into a respected business, and I think it's time to take things further." The owner frowned, intrigued. "Further?" "Yes," Reed continued. "I don't just own restaurants. I invest in businesses that have something special. And what you've built isn't just a restaurant, it's a brand, a statement. People respect you because you demand respect in return. I want to partner with you and bring that philosophy to a new level. The offer was bigger than anything the owner had expected. He had taken one location and rebuilt it from the ground up. But now, Reed was offering him something that could change the entire industry, a chance to build a chain of restaurants where employees were valued and customers knew they were supporting something meaningful. He took a deep breath, considering the weight of the opportunity. Then he smiled. Let's talk. Within weeks, plans were put into motion. Investors came forward interested in backing the expansion, and soon new locations began to open, each one built on the same principles that had started it all: respect, fairness, and hard work. Former employees who had been fired tried to reach out apologizing, trying to get their jobs back, but the answer was always the same. There are no second chances for those who never gave respect in the first place. A year later, the first franchise opened under the new brand name. People lined up, eager to support a restaurant that had become more than just a business. It was a movement, a reminder that no one should ever be judged by their appearance or position, because the person you mock today might be the one signing your paycheck tomorrow. The owner stood outside the grand opening, shaking hands with his employees, his managers, his partners. The same man who had once been laughed at for wearing a delivery uniform was now a respected businessman with a growing empire, and it all started with one moment, one choice. As he looked around at the success he had built, he knew this was just the beginning, because real power was never in titles or wealth. It was in proving that dignity and respect were the foundation of everything worth building. Some lessons are learned the easy way, others are learned when it's too late to undo the damage. The grand opening of the first franchise location was a massive success. Customers flooded in, eager to support a business that had built a reputation on integrity and fairness. Employees worked with enthusiasm, knowing they were part of something different, something that valued them as people, not just workers. The owner watched from a distance, taking in the sight of what he had built, remembering the day he had walked into that restaurant as just another delivery man. Everything had changed since then, but one thing remained the same. He never let arrogance cloud his judgment. Every decision he made was rooted in one simple belief: respect is not given to those who don't know how to give it in return. One afternoon, a familiar face walked through the doors. It was the former cashier, the one who had laughed the loudest, the one who had looked at him like he didn't belong. He stood there looking around, hesitant, nervous. His clothes were different. His energy wasn't as smug as before. When he spotted the owner, he walked over slowly, his voice quieter than it had ever been. "I heard about what you've done with the place." The owner crossed his arms, watching him carefully. "I imagine a lot of people have." The man swallowed, shifting on his feet. "Listen, I know I messed up that day. I judged you without knowing who you were, and I lost my job because of it. I deserved that. But things haven't been easy since then. I was wondering if there's any chance I could get a second chance here." The restaurant fell silent, nearby employees watching carefully, wondering what their boss would say. The owner let the moment stretch before answering. "We don't do second chances here. Not for those who had the chance to do the right thing and chose the wrong one instead." The former cashier's shoulders slumped. "I understand." Before he could turn to leave, the owner spoke again. "But I hope you learned something from all of this. Not for me, not for a job, but for the next person you come across, the next person you assume is beneath you, because next time they might not be as forgiving as I was." The man nodded slowly, taking in the weight of those words before walking away. Employees exchanged glances, understanding the message loud and clear. Character is everything, and once it's lost, it's not always something you can get back. Months passed, and the business continued to grow. Locations opened in new cities, and the restaurant became a name that people respected, not just because of the food, but because of what it represented. The owner was invited to speak at business conferences where people asked him how he built something so successful so fast. His answer was always the same: "I hired the right people, and I never let the wrong ones stay long enough to ruin what we built." At one event, an older businessman approached him. I've been in this industry a long time, but I've never seen someone turn a single restaurant into a respected brand as fast as you have. What's your secret?" The owner smiled. "It's simple. People will always remember how you treat them, Whether it's a customer, an employee, or a stranger in a delivery uniform, the only difference is some learn it when it's too late. Years later, the restaurant chain had become a national brand. The original location, the place where it all started, still stood as a reminder of the day everything changed. The owner walked through its doors one evening, taking in the familiar sights and sounds, remembering how different it all used to be. He had built something powerful, something meaningful. But the most important thing he had built was a culture that demanded respect and removed those who couldn't give it. As he sat at his usual table watching the employees work with pride, he knew that no matter how big the business grew, the lesson would always remain the same. Those who look down on others will always end up beneath them in the end. Some people think success is built on wealth. Others learn the hard way that it's built on respect. The restaurant chain had expanded beyond what anyone had imagined. The name carried weight across the country not just because of its food, but because of its reputation. A place where employees were valued, where customers knew they were supporting something meaningful, and where no one was judged by their appearance or position. The owner had achieved everything he once thought impossible, but he never forgot the moment it all started. The moment when a few arrogant employees had laughed at him, assuming he was nothing more than a delivery man. That moment had defined everything that followed, and now, standing in the headquarters of his growing empire, he knew there was still more to do. One afternoon, he received an invitation to a prestigious business conference. Billionaires, CEOs, and industry leaders would be attending. It was the kind of event that once would have been out of reach, but now he was not just attending. He was being honored as a keynote speaker for his impact on workplace culture and leadership. When he arrived at the conference, people greeted him with respect, executives shaking his hand, eager to discuss partnerships and investments. He had become someone that people wanted to be associated with. But as he made his way through the crowd, he suddenly spotted a familiar face. One of the former employees. The man who had once mocked him stood at the edge of the room wearing a waiter's uniform, carrying a tray of drinks. His posture was different now. No arrogance, no laughter, just quiet focus as he carefully balanced the tray, weaving through the powerful men and women in the room. Their eyes met for a brief moment. The former employee froze, his face paling as recognition settled in. The owner simply gave him a small nod, a silent acknowledgement before walking away. He didn't need to say anything. The lesson had already been taught. Later that evening, as he stepped onto the stage, the audience applauded, waiting to hear the story behind his success. He looked over the crowd, knowing that many of them had been born into power, while he had earned every step forward. He cleared his throat and began. I built this company on one simple rule: treat people with respect, or don't expect any in return. He let the words settle before continuing. There was a time when I walked into one of my own restaurants and the people working there thought I wasn't worth their time. They judged me based on what I wore, not on who I was. The audience listened intently, some shifting in their seats, realizing where this was going. They lost their jobs that day not because I wanted revenge, but because a business that tolerates arrogance and disrespect will never succeed. He paused, looking over the room. And I stand here today, not because of money or connections, but because I built something where people know they will be treated with dignity, where hard work is rewarded, and where no one is looked down on for where they come from. The applause was deafening. The lesson was clear. After the event, investors approached him, eager to discuss expansion deals, but he only partnered with those who shared his values. His business was never just about growth. It was about proving that real leadership meant setting a standard and never lowering it for anyone. One night, as he visited the original restaurant that started it all, he sat at his usual table, watching the employees work with pride. The young waitress who had once hesitated to speak up now managed the location, training new hires on the values that built the brand. She walked over smiling. "Sir, I think you changed the industry more than you realize." He smiled back, shaking his head. "No, I just reminded people of something they should have already known." Years later, his restaurant chain had become legendary, known not just for its food, but for the culture it built. The former employees who had mocked him had faded into the past, their names forgotten, but their mistake never erased. And as he stood in front of a new generation of business leaders, ready to pass on everything he had learned, He knew that the most important lesson would always remain the same. Respect is not given to those who refuse to give it, and those who judge others will always find themselves on the wrong side of success.